Silver Tempest is going to impact the meta a little bit more than I think some people are giving it credit for, and today we're going to talk about some of the ways that it's going to impact the meta. Hey, Nick from 9Card TCG, and today we're going to be looking at 5 decks from Japan that I think are pretty good. The decks that you're definitely going to want to keep an eye on, whether they are new, variations, or updates to current decks, or ones that we've seen successful in the past. These are ones that I think are going to be popping up and creeping up a little bit more than you might expect. And some of them you're going to be like, yeah, duh, absolutely. And there might be one or two in here that are like, hey, that's surprising. But before we get into the actual deck list, if you haven't already, do me a favor, like, subscribe, comment, all that kind of stuff tells YouTube this is a good channel and other people should watch it. Now, we're going to get these over from Twitter, and I'm really sorry. I do not know the person who I'm taking these deck lists from, but if you want to go and check out their Twitter, I have the link in the video description, so please, by all means, go check it out. I follow them, and you know, I see a lot of cool stuff from there, so you should follow them too. Anyway, let's go over to Twitter, which is something that I can't believe I'm saying, and take a look at some deck lists. The first list we're going to look at is a Regieleki Vikavolt type deck, and it's going to use the Regieleki Vmax, which has a really interesting ability, transistor, whatever it is. All of your basic lightning type Pokemon's attacks do 30 more damage. And now this does stack, so if you have 3 Regieleki Vmaxes in play, your basic lightning type Pokemon are going to hit for 90 more damage. Your Vikavolts that normally hit for 50 with something like Paralyzing Bolt, now we're going to hit for 80, 110, maybe even 140. If you have this list has choice belts, you're going to have to hit 170 on Pokemon V. And on top of all that, now they can't use item cards, and it's only a 2 attack cost, which is pretty easy to do, especially if you go first or second. If you go first, you attach. If you go second, you Melanie and then attach. And between things like Lumineon to find the Melanie, Crobat to draw a bunch of cards, the heavy Quick Ball and Ultra Balls, Battle VIP passes, there's a lot of ways that we can power up a Vikavolt very, very quickly. We don't really need to even attack with the Regieleki if we don't want to. The whole kind of idea is to use Paralyzing Bolt to really stop our opponent from playing the game. Should we need to attack with something a little bit more powerful, we can use something like the Raikou V with the Lightning Rondo attack, which does 20 damage plus 20 more damage for each Pokemon on yours and your opponent's bench. Which means now we're going to hit for a maximum of 220, throw a choice belt on there, we're hitting for 250, and on top of that, for every Regieleki Vmax, we're hitting for an additional 30 damage. So we can do quite a bit of damage with something like a Raikou V. And then we also have Drapion, which doesn't get a damage buff from the Regieleki Vmax, but it is really nice to just one-shot a Mew. Mew is very, very good. It's going to continue to be very good, and so we need an answer for Mew. Drapion is exactly that. Another new card from this deck is the Forest Sealed Stone. It's the tool card with an ability. Now this ability lets us, it's a V-Star power, so we can attach it to any of our V Pokemon, and then use the ability to search our deck for any card we want. Absolutely crazy good ability. You can only use it once per game, of course, because it is a V-Star power. But the really cool thing is that this ability is not blocked by Path to the Peak. And I'm going to say this a lot in the early stages of Silver Tempest format because it's something that's very, very important. This ability is not blocked by Path to the Peak. Your Transistor on the Regieleki Vmax will be, but you have, say, a couple of Crystal Caves. So that means if you are if you're path locked, you have a Crobat, Lumineon, Greninja, you need to like do a bunch of damage, draw some cards. If you draw into your Forest Sealed Stone, you can go ahead and attach it to any of your V Pokemon, use the ability, find your Story Mountain Stadium, play it, bump path, and now start using all your abilities. Very, very strong, really good. I expect this deck to be pretty decent. Now, me personally, as a fighting type enthusiast and someone who plays fighting types quite a bit. I would love to kind of see something like this because, man, those Regielekis are they're just so nice to hit into. They do have 310 health, so it's gonna be pretty easy to one-shot them with just the Gale Thrust. I mean, I don't mind it. I really don't. But anyway, that's deck number 1. Deck number 2 is a new archetype, Lugia VStar. It has a great ability, Storm Dive. 4 colorless energies, does 220 damage. However, the attack is fine, right? You could discard a stadium and play if you want, cool. But we're really looking to use the V-Star Power Star Assemble, which lets us get 2 colorless Pokemon that don't have a rule box from our discard onto our bench, and that's how we're going to get the Archeops that we have. If you notice, there's no Arcane, there's no Mysterious Fossil. We do not need them, we don't care about them, because we're going to use our Quick Balls, Ultra Balls, Serenas, Research, whatever, to put the Archeops into the discard so that we can then use Star Assemble, get ideally 2 Archeops onto the bench, and then start powering up anything and everything. How? Because Archeops has an ability, Primal Turbo, which lets us search our deck for 2 special energies and attach them to one of our Pokemon. So now if we have 2 Archeops, we can search our deck for 4 special energy and attach them to 1 or 2 of our Pokemon. Now, if you'll notice, we got a few interesting Pokemon to attach here. We could obviously attach to the Lugia, no problem. But we also have the amazing Regieleki. This, for a bunch of different energies, lets us just instantly knock out one of our opponent's active Pokemon. Or our opponent's active Pokemon, right? So you just power this thing up between something like double Turbo Energy and then a bunch of Aurora energies to fulfill like the Fire, Psychic, Dark, whatever it is. And then you just power this thing up. You can very easily do it with just 2 Archeops. You can, if needed, you can attach for turn to get that 5th final energy. There's a lot going on here, but you just knock it out. Now, something that you do have to keep in mind is Big Parasol might be a thing, so we have Tool Jammer to deal with that, because Big Parasol will prevent the Amazing Destruction attack from the Yveltal. So if your opponent's smart, or they're playing a deck that they're really concerned about, Giratina Star Requiem, which is something you have to compete with, another card we're going to see later is going to have a similar effect, and then also this amazing Regieleki, you might need to have an out to getting rid of something like the Big Parasol. In this case, we do have Tool Jammer, so we can, if our opponent's active Pokemon does have a Big Parasol, attach Tool Jammer, it no longer works. Fantastic. Some of the other things we have in here are Pumpkaboo to bump a path to the peak. This way we can make sure we use our our Star Assemble attack when we want to. We need to attack with Radiant Charizard, whether it's the mid game and we power it up with Archeops, or it's the very late game and it attacks for just its, like the 1 fire energy that it would need after our opponent's taken some prizes. We can use Crobat to draw a few cards. We have Drapion for the Mew. A lot of stuff that we can go, we have going on here. So, realistically, against the Mew deck, you Amazing Destruction, knock out the first Mew Vmax, and then Drapion, knock out the second Mew Vmax, you win. And then there you go. You win in literally 2 attacks. It's fantastic. You don't have any recovery, so anything that goes into the discard will stay in the discard with the exception of 2 colorless Pokemon. So keep that in mind. We do have a Dunsparce to remove the lightning weakness from our Lugias, because Palkia is really good and popular. Also, Lugia is really good and popular, and they both share a lightning weakness, which is why it's not a surprise to see something like Regieleki and Vikavolt popping up and starting to do well, because it hits 2 very strong, very popular decks for weakness. Dunsparce will get rid of that lightning weakness for you. Some don't have Dunsparce, some include things like Regigigas, which you can use Regigigas now pretty easily because the Archeops will power it up instead of the Regigigas powering itself up. And then you can start hitting Vmaxes for 300 health or 300 damage, throw a Choice Belt on there, you're hitting for 330. Drapion, there you go, Mew game, easy. With the Charizard, you might not need to do that, but hey, you never know. A lot of different energies in this deck. I'm very excited for all the different variations of Lugia, the single strike Urshifu one, the Gengar one. This seems to be the most common version, the one with the amazing rare and the radiant Charizard. So some have amazing rare Raikou to do a little bit of snipe damage. Like, there's so many different ways you can build Lugia, and I personally am super excited. Another deck that we've mentioned a couple of times, and of course, if we've mentioned it a few times, it's probably going to be on this list, is Mew Vmax. How does this deck change? Well, it doesn't really change a ton. What do we have in here? Meloetta. This one happens to be the Fusion Strike build, so we have 4 Fusion Strike energies, a couple double turbo energies. Some don't run Meloetta and they don't have the Fusion Strike energies, they run just pure double turbo. Your preference on what you want to do. We got the Rotom phones instead of the trekking shoes, which I don't play Mew enough to really know which one is better, but some very, very good players like Azul GG will tell you that trekking shoes is worse than something like Rotom phone. So not really surprised to see Rotom phone in this list. What is different about it? Well, sometimes even now in the Lost Origin format, you'll see this Deoxys, the single strike, rapid strike, fusion strike Deoxys. We can very easily power this thing up. We don't even need to use it per se, because we can copy Mew's attack if we wanted to, but also it is another single prize attacker for dealing with something like Miltank. Mew does have a shred attack. It has max miracle, does 130. It's able to take out Miltank, so you don't necessarily need it, but it could be nice for trying to offset the prize trade. Maybe they knock out a Meloetta, and then they knock out a Mew Vmax, and then you send up this Deoxys, and then next thing you know, okay, now they have to go through another Mew Vmax, and you can kind of force them into this like 8 prize game. So that's kind of nice. The other thing that we have in here is, again, the Forest Sealed Stone. We already talked about it, so it's going to be super annoying to deal with Mew now. You really need an answer from Mew. It is no longer just, Marnie Path Prey or, Roxanne Path Prey, because if they find their tablet, they just search whatever they want. It doesn't matter if Path is in play. They're running their own Roxannes. They're running their own Lost Cities to get rid of Drapions, because Drapion's super annoying. So have Drapion, have a Mew answer in your deck, please. It's super, super important. It's very good at just one of regionals. And if you look at all those decks, what do they have in common? No Drapion. So get your Mew answers ready. It's super strong between the choice belts, the power tablets, the Meloetta. I mean, you could do so much damage, I literally played someone recently, during this Lost Origin format. They were playing Mew. It was the first turn of the game. They didn't get a chance to play a supporter. I haven't even had a chance to go yet, and yet they drew 30 cards. Mew is really good. I can't stress this enough. I hate to say it and I hate to see it. Gotta deal with it. Speaking of ways to deal with Mew, you might see a resurgence of Arceus Beedrill. Or why is this deck something that we might want to see? Beedrill has an attack, persist, sting, which if your opponent's active Pokemon has any special energy attached to it, it's instantly knocked out, and we can do that for a single grass energy. Now you might notice we don't have Weedle and Kakuna, so how do we get this Beedrill into play? We have a couple of single strike mustards. You can only use single strike mustard if it's the last card in your hand, but if it is and you do play it, search your deck for a single strike Pokemon, put it onto your bench, and then you get to shuffle your deck, draw 5 cards. It is worth noting, you must have an open bench spot in order to play Mustard. You do not need to get a Pokemon in order to draw the cards, but you need an open bench spot, and it has to be the last card in your hand. So those are the 2 conditions, but between Arceus and Beedrill, we do have that Charizard, and that Charizard can, come in and do some major, major damage. But why Beedrill? What is the deal? What's its matchup? There was a time where it was really good, and then Palkia came out, and Beedrill was no longer good. Well, if you look at it, we have Mew, Lugia, Regis, Arceus decks. I feel like there's more Zoroark decks tend to run a lot of special energy, those DTEs. So there's a lot of popular decks that will use special energies. Even sometimes Giratina decks are going to run capture energies. Maybe you can catch a Kyurem Palkia off guard. They see the what they think is Arceus and Teleon. They attach a wash energy to their Kyurem, thinking what's the harm, and then all of a sudden this Beedrill comes out and instantly KOs it. It could happen. It's definitely a thing, especially in in real life tournaments as opposed to online tournaments where they can see your deck list. Catching your opponent by surprise in regular in-person tournaments is a thing and something you might be able to do. So do not discount the Beedrill. I think it might be back. I think it's a really good answer for the meta at the moment. If we start to lose all these special energies, maybe Zoroark starts to switch to like Melanie builds or Psychic energies or something, and then Reggie's kind of starts to fall off because Guja's really popular, and there's a lot of things that can like tank and deal with Reggie's, then maybe if your only matchup is like Lugia, unless it's like an absurdly high, or I guess Mew too. I mean, if Mew and Lugia are really high percentages of the meta and they're both really good decks, this could be a really good answer. For the decks that don't have special energies, you still have Arceus and Teleon, and Charizard, which I know isn't like the greatest deck at the moment, but it's still not bad by any means. The last deck is this Giratina Lost Zone deck. You can see it has a couple of capture energies that we've mentioned. A tech card that you're going to see a little bit more often is Temple of Sinnoh, because Lugia is going to accelerate 1,000 special energies. Reggie's uses nothing but special energies. Zoroark uses nothing but special energies. I mean, there's a lot of things. Mew uses special energies. Mew doesn't really matter as much unless you're going against a double turbo build, because, well, if they get 2 Fusion Strike energies, they just count as colorless energies, and their Cross Fusion Strike attack is for 2 colorless, so it doesn't really matter too much. But forcing them sometimes to have the second double turbo energy and commit it to the active Mew, as opposed to now they have a benched one powered up, can be kind of nice. These decks often run like 4 double turbo energies and that's it. So if 2 of them are on one Mew and you knock that out, that's half of that energy's gone. That's pretty nice. So something else that we can take a look at is, of course, Giratina VStar with the Lost Impact of those 280 damage for a Grass Psychic colorless. You got a Lost Zone 2 energies, but you know what? When you're most likely taking a knockout, it does not matter that much. And then you have Star Requiem for a Grass Psychic. If you have 10 or more cards into the Lost Zone, your opponent's active Pokemon is just knocked out. Now, of course, we do need an answer for something like Big Parasol, and you can see this deck doesn't really have one. Usually there'll be like a Tool Jammer, Lost Vacuum or something. So, but what they can do is boss up something on the bench and start Requiem that. It's an option. But yeah, you would like to see some type of way of dealing with Big Parasol. But I mean, come on, this deck, you probably don't even need it that much. You're hitting for 280 with a choice belt. You're hitting for 310. What are you not really knocking out in one hit? On top of that, you have things like Cramorant, so you can soften up, or you can, if you don't get the KO immediately with the Giratina, Cramorant can come and take a KO pretty easily. Sableye can spread a bunch of damage around so that you're making sure you're taking knockouts with Giratina, or at the same time, like I said, we just boss up something that doesn't have a Big Parasol, and then we can use Sableye to finish, sprinkle some damage here and there, and get our knockouts kind of clean up after Giratina. Even something like Radiant Greninja can go ahead and use its Moonlight Shuriken attack to deal 90 damage to 2 Pokemon. So if you soften them enough with Giratina's, Cramorant's, the Sableye, you can just finish them off with something like Radiant Greninja. And then of course Drapion for the Mew matchup, because then literally all you have to do is either Star Requiem and Drapion, or Drapion Star Requiem, depending on the order and how fast you can get stuff into the Lost Zone. Can you Lost Zone before they Big Parasol? Either way, or you Drapion 1, Star Requiem a Genesect, and then just boss up a Genesect KO. Like, there's so many ways that you can beat Mew with Drapion Giratina. It's a very good deck. You're going to be one-shotting Palkia VStars, Arceus VStars. I mean, there's a lot of things. 4 Mirage Gates to really accelerate those energies. Since we are Lost Zoning energies, 1, we need a way to recover those energies. Ordinary Rod, some energies that we might have discarded, and then Mirage Gate them so we can, continue to hit with Lost Impact. But then also, that gets us closer to 10 cards in the Lost Zone, so that now we could start Requiem, which means we KO without having to Lost Zone energies. So knowing when to Lost Impact versus when to start Requiem is it's a very important part of this game. Knowing when to actually bench your Giratina is an important part of this game. This deck does not run a Thornton, and some people do really like Thorntons because you can have like Comfeys on the bench, and then out of nowhere, you just turn that into a Giratina V that might have gotten knocked out or you discarded. Evolve it into a V-Star, you Mirage Gate, and then boom, before you know it, you're hitting with Star Requiem, and your opponent didn't see it coming at all. So there's a lot of lines to play with this deck. It's very good. You're seeing it be super successful here in online tournaments and in the US. It's a very, very good deck. I think all of these are really solid decks and ones that you need to pay attention to, if not play or counter. So there you have it, 5 decks from Japan that I think you really need to pay attention to. I kind of just said that, so we're going to wrap this up. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, found this informative. If you did, like, subscribe, comment, and let me know what decks you're interested in from the Silver Tempest format. I want to hear from you. And that's going to do it for us today. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time.